Hello and welcome to Outdoors with Rick Ripley. It's a beautiful Memorial Day weekend. The trees are blooming, the sun is shining. It's a great time to be outdoors. Today's show, I want to teach you to teach your kids how to go fishing and to catch fish. But it's a very difficult process to get started, and it takes a lot of patience. So first, before we get going, let's go over some of the basics. The first piece of advice I have for teaching a kid to fish, ages 4 through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, is really not to fish. And that might sound a little strange, but what I mean by that is I think it's more important to take a young kid out into the woods, out into the pond or to the ocean. And let's take Borderland for an example as taking a child to the pond. I think it's more important that that child learns to catch frogs, learns to feel comfortable walking around in the water, has fun throwing rocks in the pond, throwing sticks in the pond. You kind of get used to just having fun and feeling comfortable in the environment. I think that's really important because a lot of people, I think, start their kids too young fishing, and it just takes too much patience and it's too difficult. And I think that's where a lot of things go wrong. But I think once you do that and you spend a lot of time in the woods and you have fun catching the frogs and the crayfish and the minnows and you're looking at the fish, I think then when the child gets to be 9 or 10 years old, he's really ready to catch some fish. Okay, the first part of the fishing outfit is the rod itself. This rod is one of my favorite rods that I own. And I spent $5 for this rod in 1991 at Building 19. And it's still one of my favorite rods. I like it because it's small. And that leads me to an important point. Make sure when you're buying your fishing equipment that you start small with a child. You know, a 9 or 10-year-old kid, especially if you're fishing for sunfish or trout, or in Borderland for bass, you know, you don't want some heavy, you know, huge rod that the kid has a hard time holding. You want to find something nice and small, and then when they catch a fish on that rod, it's going to be a lot more sensitive to them, so they're going to enjoy the experience a lot more, as they're going to be able to feel the fish as you're reeling it in. So the most important thing is to get a small rod, and don't worry about spending a lot of money on your rod to begin with. I've spent thousands of dollars on. I have a couple fly rods that are probably worth $500 or $600, and some other fishing rods that are expensive. Yet this is probably my favorite rod I paid $5 for. The other piece, the next piece, is the reel itself. Now the fishing reel is something you want to spend a little bit of money on. You want to buy a quality reel. You want to get a model like a Shimano or a Penn or Abu Garcia, a Daiwa. Some popular name brand that's made very well. I always I make a comparison that the reel is like the engine on a boat. You want to make sure when you go out into, you know, for a boat ride that you have a dependable engine. Same thing with the rod and the reel. And it's very important that you match up the two. You know, this is a small rod that is made for a fairly small reel. Each reel, if you look closely at the reel, at the head of the reel here, it'll tell you its line capacity, 2-pound, 4-pound, or 6-pound test. 2, 4, and 6-pound test are three of the lightest lines that you can buy. So you want to match that up with a small reel to a small rod. But again, you want to match up. You want to find out this has 10-pound test. This 10-pound test is a little thicker, obviously, than the 2 or 4 or 6-pound test. So you would want to look for a box like this that says, say, 6-pound test or 8-pound test on it, okay? And you want to match that up to the reel. The next most important piece of fishing is hook size. This is probably the most important piece that you need to learn to help a kid catch a fish, or help yourself catch a fish for that matter. The biggest mistake that people make is using a hook that's too large for the fish they're trying to catch. For example, this hook right here is a size 1 actually it's a size 2 bass hook. This is great for fishing for largemouth bass with a plastic worm. That's something we'll talk about in another show. So that's size 2. This is size 6. This is even a little bit too big for catching sunfish or trout. They have very small mouths. So you want to get a hook that's, where it doesn't interfere as they eat the worm or the power bait, whatever you're using. So we have a 2, 6, and this here is a 10. I would recommend buying size 10 or 12 to tie on to your fishing outfit to catch sunfish and massapog. A little small hook right here, a small little hook size 10 or 12. You put the worm on that hook, the sunfish will eat the worm, and it just makes it a lot easier to catch the fish at that point. The next thing you're going to want to get is the old-fashioned bobber. This, in my opinion, may be the most important piece of the outfit because it's exciting for the kids. There's nothing more exciting for some kids, okay, than to go to a pond where there's tons of sunfish around and you cast this little thing into the liquid and all of a sudden it starts to go under. And that creates the excitement, and that also allows the child to know that there's a fish taking his worm or his bait or whatever, and that tells him to set the hook, okay? But using a bobber is lots of fun for kids. This little red and white bobber is probably responsible for more people fishing in this world than anything else. It's very exciting for some kids, and it's probably my favorite part of fishing, taking the kids fishing with the bobber, with worms, or using minnows or other live bait, going for largemouth bass or sunfish or anything in one of the great ponds we have. Another very important piece to your fishing tackle is the needle nose plier. Again, I can't stress how important this tool is. It's very important for two reasons. Let's take the sunfish example that we've been talking about. If you're catching sunfish, the sunfish has adapted some pretty sharp spines as a defense mechanism to the largemouth bass and the eastern chain pickerel that like to eat them for lunch and breakfast. So if you don't handle the sunfish correctly, you'll hurt the fish. You'll not only hurt the fish, but you'll get hurt in the process. Or if you're catching trout at massapog, it's just a good idea if you're going to let the fish go and if you're going to practice catch and release. It's important not to touch the fish if you can help it. The needle nose pliers are going to allow you to, after you catch the fish and you bring it up to shore, you'll be able to take let's use the big hook for an example. As the hook is in the fish's mouth, and you'll be able just to take the needle nose pliers and clamp on here, and just by pulling this way, the fish will be released, and you'll have not had to touch the fish at all. You'll have no spine injury in your hand from the fish, and the fish will be better off and more apt to swim off to a healthy life. Okay, now I want to show you 3 different knots that you really need to learn to tie efficiently to make your experience that much more enjoyable while you're on the water fishing with kids. It's real important to be able to tie the correct knot. It's really simple too. As an example, I have this little this tool here that shows, if you just imagine this being the eye of the hook, and the yarn would be the line, okay, just to make it easier for filming purposes. The first one I want to show you is called a fisherman's knot, and this is what you would use to tie when you tie the number 10 or 12 hook to the thin line on your reel. Simply insert the line in the hook eye, and you take it and you twist the line 2, 3, 4 or 5 times, and then the tag end of your line, which is this end here, there's a opening here at the very bottom. You put that tag end through the bottom here, and you pull. okay? It's a little more difficult to do with yarn, but you get the idea. And you simply pull that down, and you have a fisherman's knot.